graduates during his stay at NIT Calicut. His areas of interest are control system, power system dynamics and control, system identification and parameter estimations, image processing, and unconventional robotics. So we welcome you, sir. So we are very fortunate to have you again in this FTP as a part of our FDP on this second edition of Internet of Things. Here it is for agriculture development. So this session, it's obviously that this session is a mandate session. So this time we have selected this NEP. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Reena, for the kind introduction and also for inviting me to the FDP as a resource person. So good afternoon to all the participants. I hope I am audible to all across on the online available right now. Can anyone say yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So welcome to the session. I think I should put it in the, I should first of all switch off, mute my video. Let me try it.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, fine. I'll put, now this is in the PPT mode. So welcome to the session on national education policy. I am actually I am interested to talk on this subject because when I started my career with NIT Calicut in 1985, shortly after that came the new education policy issued or released by the Rajiv Gandhi government in 1986. Consequent to that, we had gone through many exercises which were actually the result of the new policy. So education policy had become something which is for me to talk about. So we look at national education policy of the latest version 2020. And from that, we will also look at the new avenues and challenges for the technical education, because all of you, I believe, are belonging to the technical education realm. And this faculty development program is intended to equip you with some new knowledge to take back to the classroom. So now, looking at education policy, when the government had published the NEP 2020, there were a lot of you can say fascination for that particular news item, new education policy. What is an education policy? It is not a rule. Education policy is not a rule. It is solely a policy setting by the apex level of the government to guide the government in framing the programs of action for development, national development, for developing the funding schemes, focusing on certain structured items which were not so progressed in the past, and then to revise or make regulations to suit the new course of action in the educational development. So just because the government had published a policy, nothing is going to happen unless government is very keen in actualizing the policy through various programs of action, funding schemes, and the new regulations. So this NEP, all the NEPs were with the goals of improving the quality of education and to ensure the access to education for all the citizens. So when government issue a policy, it is actually to cover all the citizens. Maybe in the implementation, that it could, you can say the universal access may not be happening. That is why government is to go for revising the policies and issuing new policies again and again. So historically, India had gone through different commissions to study on the education and to recommend reformations in the education sector. And the very first one is a very famous, all of you might have heard about the Kothari Commission. So the first national policy on education had come up in 1968, and the second education policy had come up in 1986, and the third one, and again the 1986 policy was modified, and that was again brought up in 1992, and now the Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi had come up with more, you can say, more action-oriented national education policy, that is the NEP 2020. So if you look at NEP, that NP in 1968, this was, there was a commission, Education Commission, which was appointed in 1964 with the mandate of studying the Indian education system and then comparing it with the international scenario, then to come up with recommendations to globalize Indian education. That was the mandate. If we examine the report correctly, the internal or the domestic situation also you have to improve, but more than that, the Indian education system should become competing with the international education scenario. So the National Education Commission was headed by Daulat Singh Kothari, or DS Kothari, who was the chairman of UGC at that point in time, to examine all aspects of the educational sector in India and to evolve a general pattern of education and to advise guidelines and policies for the development of education in India. The main frontline activities were handled by 19 task forces. Though it was a commission named as Kothari Commission, there were large number of people, more than 500 people were there in the commission's office. And there are 19 task forces to handle various aspects of education and to work on by gathering the historical evidences and then studying the international scenario and developing recommendations which could be incorporated in the commission's report. So never be of the thinking that a commission means a single man's job. It's not like that. It's a huge investment is involved in the appointment of commission and also working of the commission. Then the commission submitted a 287-page long report on 29th of June to the then Education Minister, Mr. M.G. Chagla. And then, hello. One of the main recommendation of the commission was standardization of the education system on a 10+2+3 pattern. 10 for schooling, and 2 for pre-university, and 3 for the degree program. So 10, 2, 3 cross. And you can see that if you again go to the history of India after independence, the chairmanship of the commission, Kothari Commission, was the 6th commission in India post-independence and the first commission with comprehensive terms of reference on education. So there were multiple commissions after independence. Kothari Commission was the fully empowered commission on education after independence. And this, interestingly, there were 19 recommendations, perhaps evolved from the 19 task forces, covering primary education, secondary education, degree level education, women's education, education of the weaker sections, and so on. And then the Kothari Commission recommended to have a national policy on education, so which could be released by the government. And then there were also observations. These are the words quoted from the commission's report. A major goal of examination reform should be to improve the reliability and validity of examinations and to make evaluation a continuous process aimed at helping the student to improve his level of achievement rather than at certifying the quality of his performance at a given point in time. And interestingly, or more important point in this wording is that Now we are talking too much about outcome-based education, continuous evaluation and all that. But the Kothari Commission could foresee the importance of continuous evaluation and in the education. Now we can see that it is getting extended even to the school level. And during the COVID time, the agencies like CBSE or the universities were forced to totally depend on the evaluations conducted by the teachers at the college level. So this was something you can say the prophet's word that had come from the Kothari Commission. Now the Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi had accepted the recommendation of Kothari Commission and released the National Education Policy in 1968 after 2 years of submission of the report by the Kothari Commission. And the second one happened in 1986 when Rajiv Gandhi had become the Prime Minister of India. And then the young Prime Minister that time wanted to have technological advancement in the country. And also he wanted the people to enjoy the progress or the benefit of technological progress. So that is why a modified policy was introduced. And this was also meant for covering certain sectors which were yet to be empowered through the education. So there were focus on adult education to improve the literacy of the people. There were focused programs on scheduled tribes and scheduled caste communities, and a lot of things have happened there because of that policy. And then one point to be noted is from 1986 to 1992, people were talking about actualizing or implementing the policy, but a program of action had happened in 1992 when Narasimha Rao government started acting on that new education policy of 1986. And then subsequently, after 13 years or so, the Manmohan Singh government had again come up with many actions on the implementation of the national policy in 1986. Then some of the things which are of significance, I will come across it later. The common entrance examinations was a consequence of the new education policy, because the government had noted that there are multiple agencies working on the education sector, and there are multiple curricula of different types present there. So how to have a common denominator for comparing the students for selection purposes, and that was the motivation for having a common entrance examination. Now this common entrance is getting now national is coming under the new education policy. Anyway, so if we look at historically, from 1968 to 2020, our country had gone through different steps in the policy formulations and policy implementations, and all the actualization of the social development. And in 2017, a new education plan was launched by the Narendra Modi government, and that was the starting point for the new education policy in 2020. So this is the roadmap of policy formulations and development in education sector in India. Now, this is the point which I would like to share from my own, you can say, experiences in my career. So NEP 1968 and 1986 wanted to increase the coverage of education in India. And in 1986, the especially there was a focus on adult education to increase the adult literacy. And the government started to officially recognize the preschools. And in the government sector, government funded Anganwadis as a project action or project activity. So we now have Anganwadis across India to take care of the children from age of 3 to age of 6 till the time they go to the school. Then autonomy for the colleges and institutions of national importance and creation of deemed to be universities. These were some of the new developments happened after the 1986 policy. And then from 1992 onwards, the education sector got private players. So we know private colleges have started across India and private universities are now present. So this privatization of the education sector was permitted by the government to increase the access to the people, because the government could not invest so much for creating the facilities for the people. So government allowed private players, and now we have private public partnership in education. The triple ITM is an example of public private partnership in the education. So schemes, there were schemes, special schemes for socially and economically weaker sections. In NET Calicut, we were asked to implement certain schemes like mass employment generation programs, and then the internship program for the women to train them in IT skills. These were funded by the government initially, but later on it stopped. So we every 5-year plan, we were asked to submit the proposals for the program under the programs of action of NP 1986, and the industry institute linkage. That was another point. So the institutions were given separate funding for beginning the industry interaction, and then entrepreneurship development that was also started after the NP 1986. And then emphasis on education, research in academic institutions, or giving importance and giving weightage for research in academic institutions. Apart from only simple teaching, faculty should be also doing research. And then another point is that there was slow progress in employment creation through small scale industries. And then meanwhile, what happened was that the big industries have almost stagnated. There were not much of big industries started in the last 20 decades in India. Maybe 1970 up to 1990 or 2000, we had seen expansion of industries, but after that, not much of big industries have come up in India. And the requirement of industries also got almost stagnated. They wanted only to fill the retirement vacancies, or very small quantities only they needed the manpower. And the government then started emphasizing on self-employment and startups. That is still continuing. But if you look at international scenario, the technological advancement had happened so much, and the focus in industry had changed from big industry to small industries and micro industries, because the instead of having big industries dealing with the entire life cycle of the product, the industries started promoting ancillary industries, and the size of the industry had come down, and the number of people also had come down, but cumulatively there were an increase in the employment. And now another point was that in India, there were not much significant or you can say importance given for innovations and companies getting originated from the academic campuses. We were only thinking that the academic institutions have a responsibility only to teach and not doing anything more than. But now situation has changed. Everybody is talking about innovation. Everybody is talking about startups from the campuses, within the campuses, and things like that. And then the capacity expansion of academic system had led to a degradation of the total quality of the graduate. The graduates were having only very narrow knowledge in the academic domain, and they were to be given a detailed training or in-depth training before they could take up the job in a particular situation. So the skill gaps, that had also become a concern, because the academic system could not impart the right skills that were needed by the modern industries. Then the gross enrollment ratio had increased to 26%, or roughly 20%. This gross enrollment ratio means if we consider 100 people eligible for higher education, 26 can get into higher education. If GER in primary education is 30%, out of the 100 students eligible to go to the school, only 30 students can. This is the significance of GER. Now, government, the GER is an indication of the access to education. So India still, after 73 years or 74 years of independence, the GER is only 26%, or roughly less than 30%. It is improving, but still it is low. So considering all these aspects, there were need for the new focus for education to address the issue of large scale employment generation and the creation of innovations, and then creation of more manpower with good quality. There were concerns for quality in education and employability. Along with that had come a more significant one. Can we be able to live in this world for another 100 years? That was the question. Now we are asking, can we be facing a devastating end for the humanity or the total life system in the earth because of the climate change and because of the environmental issues? And can we have a sustainable progress so that for our descendants would also have a comfortable living? So nations have become increasingly conscious about environmental degradation, global warming, and the climate change. And the people have become aware of the poverty and the hunger existing in spite of the scientific and technological progress. And this we know. Through the media, we come to know the hardships of people across the world. In spite of a good progress, and you can say so much in the technological side and the scientific side, there are people who are deprived of even a one-time meal of a day. The nation have become aware of the need for high quality education to transform the economy by ensuring equity and access. So here comes the demographic advantage of the India compared to any other nation. And India is exporting the manpower across the world because there is a need somewhere in the world, and we are able to provide educated people and skilled people, at least in small quantities. Now this, if it is internally happening, the nation would be developing much faster. And there is a need for sustainability in the progress. Whatever we do should not be devastating or degenerating in terms of the progress, and the environmental protection is considered. It should be sustainable. And considering all these aspects, the United Nations had constituted a task force to work on sustainability, and the UN had adopted 17 sustainable development goals. And you can see that goal number 4, SDG 4, is quality education. So this means that there are nations in the world, or there may be people, part of the humanity somewhere in the world, who are not having the chance to get good education. And all these factors, you can see the 17 goals are covering all aspects of human life, from food to peace and justice, or the bilateral relations between the can say the life. The goal number 14 deal with the life below water, that is again dealing with the climate and the ocean climate. So all these are now have been adopted by the governments, which are the members of the United Nations organization. You can see that the building on the principle of leaving no one behind, the new UN agenda emphasizes a holistic approach to achieving sustainable development. This is sustainable development has become now the focus. And you can look at, just Google it, you will get more details about the sustainable development goals. So India, being a member in the United Nations, adopted all these goals and working on one by one. And some of the things the government could initiate immediately, that is one on the education. So the national policy on education, which was approved in 2020 on 29 July 2020 by the cabinet, outlines India's vision of new education system that is focusing on SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4. And the government is mentioning that the new policy, 2020 policy, is replacing all the old policies, totally replacing all the policies. And now onwards, whatever government is doing shall be based on the new education policy 2020. Now, this picture gives you the graphical representation of the 17 goals. And the quality education, if you read the NEP 2020 document, you can see that government is referring to SDG 4. So that is to have uniform access by all the people for quality education. This is the, you can say that the goal. Now, just to go back, just to know some points which are very interesting. In the Kothari Commission's report, there was an observation that it will be advantageous to have a broadly uniform educational structure in all parts of the country. The ultimate objective should be to adopt 10+2+3 pattern, the higher secondary stages of 2-year being located in schools, colleges, or both according to the local condition. And we know that we have been following the 10+2+3 pattern. An engineering degree is of 4 years. Now, why the 15 years time for graduation was stipulated? In India, there was a course of something like 10th class and then a 1-year pre-university and then the university degree of 2 years. So within 13 years, one was able to get a graduate degree in India, the BA degree, BA in science or BA in literature, everything was named as Bachelor of Arts in 1960s. Now, in US, one person need to put in 16 years of study to get a degree. And in USSR and maybe in UK, they were to take 15 years or 16 years to get the first degree. So in India, when we compare the learning, it happens only for 13 years, while the foreign countries, they were insisting for 15 years or 16 years to get the first degree. So there was a mismatch in the quality of the graduate, and the graduate from India was not considered equivalent to a graduate in UK at that point in time. So government wanted to change that and then introduce the 10+2+3 pattern. And now this is, we will see more about that in the NP. You can say that this step taken in 1968 was the first step in globalizing Indian education so that Indian graduates would be competing with the international graduate. And then 1986, the government wanted a radical reconstruction of the education system to improve its quality at all stages, and therefore gave much greater attention to science and technology, the cultivation of moral values, and a closer relation between education and life of the people. So the community service had become part of the academic institutions after the 1986 policy. Then the program of action 1992 had opened up education sector for the private players, and that we know what has happened thereafter. Now, after the independence until 2000, the equity and access to education has expanded, and we have seen that the GER has increased from 3% to 26% over this period of time. And then various initiatives of the government and change in the social perception about the need for formal education. Now, across India, all the community and all the sectors of our people, they are aware of the need for a formal secular education. And we have a variety of institutions now, from the prime institutions to the colleges and schools in the private sectors and the government. Private sector has started expanding. Quality of education and the inadequacy in the skill set required for new jobs have become matters of concern. And the government is now examining why there is a skill gap. So, and the government had seen that even though capacity has increased, the skill required did not happen. Why it is? Because sometimes maybe that all of you can find out the reasons. There were large scale penetration of computers, and then there were, you can see that information technology had become so powerful, and it had penetrated to almost all walks of life. Now the old job profile got changed. So one example which I could quote from my own life experience is the case of a draftsman who used to be present in the PWD or in industries. And I also happened to work for a short time in a government office where I was having a draftsman with me. But the draftsman lost a job because now we have the CAD, computer-aided drafting and computer-aided drawing and computer-aided analysis. So the draftsman is not needed to create the drawing in that you can say the formal drawing. Everything can be done on the computer. It can be edited any number of times, and the draftsman lost his job as such. So draftsman had to be re-engineered. Typist lost the job. Plant operators were replaced with electronic controllers, and the supervisors were there is no supervisor in the industries. An engineer can sit in the cabin and see whatever is happening on the computer screen. So a lot many jobs lost the relevance because of the information technology. And if people wanted to have job, they had to change. And this skilling up process got slowed down. That could be one of the reasons. And now just to tell you about, to invite your attention to the life cycle systems that is prevalent in industry. Just one example, there is a life cycle for engineering drawing. There is a process of sketching. So there is a process of sketching and draw, put the dimensions, check, analyze, and then if there is a change, that sheet will have to be removed. Again, will be given in the sketch form by the engineer, and it will be drawn, dimensioned, and again that process will happen. And then some point in time, the drawing will escape the life cycle and it will go for the production. So this is you can say, a very simple case of engineering drawings, which is essential for converting an idea into a product. Now the life cycle, you can see the entire life cycle of the drawing is now migrated to computer. So instead of 3 people or 4 people in the life cycle, entire thing can be done by 1 or 2 people who are skilled. So the job role had changed, and the functionality also got changed. The situation also got changed, but academic institutions did not change much. Now only people started teaching CAD in the colleges, though the change had happened more than 20 years back. And now the students, they don't learn the drawing correctly, or not the colleges teach the CAD. That is the scenario now we can see. Now it is slowly changing. People become aware of the skill set, and the curriculum also getting changed slowly. So there is a quality consciousness happening about, and we talk about the employability of the graduate because of the quality consciousness we had observed. There is a technological change that has transformed the job, as what we have seen. And the education sector proceeded with specialization and simplification of coaching. Rather than adding multiple skills, the education sector focused on, you can see, mono skills rather than multi skills. And maybe that the government focused only on the expansion of the capacity rather than the increase in the quality. That had finally led to the skill gaps in the graduates, perhaps, that we have to examine and see. And then there is a silo problem that is also mentioned in the new education policy, that each sector is working on its own. And the graphics, you can see the picture, I hope you can see that. Engineering is in one silo, agriculture is in another silo, and school education is another silo. There is no cross-talk, or you can say cross-fertilization. Though agriculture uses a lot of engineering, or medicine uses a lot of engineering, in the education sector, these sectors are working like vertical silos. So this was the problem addressed in the new education policy and policy 1 now, to have multidisciplinary universities and colleges. So just to have a joke, engineering students started finding drawing as an unnecessary burden. And all of you might have seen that there is a hesitation for engineering students to learn drawing and to develop a skill in drawing. Computer science students say that they do not at all need drawing at all. And medical students, they do say that they don't need physics and mathematics. They need only chemistry and biology. And chemistry students found any optional subject a waste. They want only to study chemistry. All others are burden for them. And mathematics students never think why one should learn mathematics. Mathematics has, as a science, it has some knowledge content, but from the social viewpoint, mathematics had the application. So the application-oriented learning does not happen in any of these things, and the relation with other discipline is also not happening. This is what is called the silo problem. And now we are in the era of Industry 4.0, which wants everybody to know everything. Even a common man should know how to use the smartphone to remit pay the electricity bill or the telephone bill or whatever it is. And we can see now the total security surveillance of my home from distance if I have a mobile phone. So a common man need to know much more technologically itself. So obviously the educated people should be much more versatile. Now, how to avoid the silo problem, which has been now NEP 2020, that all should promote interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches in education, especially in higher education. This is the, you can say, the focus, that higher education should become multidisciplinary. Now we will have the new education NEP 2020 has two sections. One is dealing with school education and other on higher education. We'll quickly look at the school education because as a parent, we may have some interest in this new policy. So the age 3 to 6 is called the early childhood care education. So that is replacing the Anganawadis. So prior to the age of 5, every child will move to a preparatory class or a Balavattiga. And from age to 6 to 8, they will be in grade 2, which is called the foundational stage. And age 8 to 11, that is grade 3 to 5, that is the preparatory stage. Then age 11 to 14 is grade 6 to 8, which is the middle stage, where experiential learning in sciences, mathematics, social science, etc. need to be emphasized. And age 14 to 18, grade 9 to 12 is secondary stage. People will have to have multidisciplinary study, greater social critical thinking, flexibility, and students should be allowed to choose the subject of his interest, his or her interest. This is the period covering up to 18. So age 3 to 18 is the preschooling and schooling stage. And then the medium of instruction up to grade 5 should be preferably the local language. And even now the AICT is saying that the higher engineering education also can be in the local language. School students have 10 bagless days for working on some skill part or vocational part, which are called the informal internship. These are some of the things I have taken from the NEP. This is only a graphical representation, and you can see that in the previous system or the existing system, we have ages up to 6 to 16. We have the 10 class 1 to 10, and then the pre-degree or the +2 level happening at the age of 16 to 18. But now in the new one, we will have 4 stages: foundational stage, preparatory stage, middle stage, and secondary stage. So 4 stages in the education, and each with a different focus. Foundational stage is literacy, is focusing on literacy and numeracy. But when it comes to secondary stage, it will have to be critical thinking and multi-skill or multiple, you can say multidisciplinary learning. Now coming to the second part of the NEP, that is dealing with higher education. The NEP 2020 envisages a total revamping of the educational system in India. As we have seen, the formal schooling shall be for 15 years up to the age of 18. And then 3 to 4 years for the graduation. Government says that it should be 4 years, but to accommodate the existing system, government says that the duration of degree program can be either 3 or 4. And then the campuses should turn from the mono discipline type of campus to multidiscipline campus with multiple flexible choices for the courses and multiple entry and exit point. And now, if you see the existing scheme, one person will become a graduate at the age of 21 or 22. And in the new system also, it will be more or less same 21 or 22. So there is not much change in the duration of education till the first degree. But the highlights are multidisciplinary and holistic undergraduate education. Then the education system should create creativity and critical thinking, inculcate ethics and human and constitutional values, and there should be an extensive use of technology in teaching and learning. Then increasing access to the Divyangan students. So full equity and inclusion as the cornerstone of all educational decisions, that all students are able to thrive in the education system. So here, the point what as teachers, what we have to note is that once the student is admitted, we are bound to take care of the student in all ways, like a human being, also like a technocrat or a scientist. We have to provide all inputs needed for the student to get converted into a graduate. Then outstanding research, there is another responsibility coming for the teachers, that they should not be ignoring research. So academic institutions will be evaluated based on, and even the teachers will be evaluated based on their performance as a researcher. There is a clause that is there in the NPE. So teaching alone will not be sufficient for the teachers. Then another point is that we should become proud about our rich cultural heritage and the older knowledge system, which somehow got faded from our day-to-day life. Then another one is that the gross enrollment ratio should increase to 50%, which is currently half of it. So the challenge in terms of capacity, if you look at that, the GER had to increase from 26% to 50%. And if we say engineering and technology sector, which is also only accommodating only 25 or 20% of the eligible people, we should also have a double capacity for the engineering sector. We know what are the challenges associated with that. Now in India, almost the annual intake is 8 lakhs for engineering, which is now declining slowly. But if we want to double the GER in engineering, instead of 8 lakhs, we should have 16 lakhs students joining engineering education. Obviously, we should also be careful that where this 16 lakh student would go after the graduation. And that too, that point is that it should happen in the next 10 to 15 years. This is the challenge. And an observation that we can make is that the GER has increased from 3% to 4% at the time of independence to 26% in a duration of 73 to 74 years. And we want the increase from 26% to 50% to happen in 10 to 15 years. So you can imagine the challenge involved in it. Then another point is that system of affiliated colleges will be phased out in 15 years, and colleges will be given greater autonomy and power to grant degrees. The deemed university status will end. That I will have some more slides on this one. And this is what a national testing agency will be conducting a common college entrance examination twice a year. So the admission to the college shall be based on the national testing agency score. So we may have another mushrooming of the coaching institutions to coach the students for the national eligibility test. Maybe that we'll have to wait and see. Now, I am taking out a paragraph from the NEP. There is a global, the NEP is aware of a global ecosystem. So we have to think about our own students are the people moving across the world. So we have to think globally. And we have to train the students to think critically. And we have to facilitate multidisciplinary learning. And then we have to make the learning immersive. Immersive in the sense that total experiential learning. Like a carpenter. If a carpenter teach you carpentry, you should be able to make something out of the wood, raw wood. So you have to go through the entire process of preparing the log of wood and converting it into a product or a piece of furniture. Then all this process of education should not be ignoring the values and ethics. So that should also be there. So these are the, you can say the 5 focus points we need to have in our education system. So think critically, to solve real problems, and to be creative and multidisciplinary, to adapt and innovate, to absorb new knowledge in the fast changing world. So this is what our education system should be delivering to the student. Now coming to the engineering, now we have seen that the new policy on education is talking about multidisciplinary. So we have vertical specializations in engineering called the civil, computer science, mechanical, electrical, and much. These are all some of the names of some of the degrees or BTech programs conducted by different institutions. So in one college itself, we have multiple departments, but multidisciplinary does not mean multiple departments. Multidisciplinary means here, for example, this is the case of one institution, one university in France. The university has arts, humanities, and languages, law, economics and management, human and social sciences, science, technology, health, and engineering. All these are there in one unit. In our case also, we have, through the affiliation system, we have multiple disciplines in a university. But as a university, if we take the campus of the university, we may not have that much of a variety of discipline. So NEP 2020 envisages to have universities and colleges which are truly multidisciplinary, with engineering, agriculture, arts, and other disciplines present in the same university to enable cross-fertilization. This is another important point. Cross-fertilization, now we don't have it happening, or even if it is happening, it's solely for the very low level. And then promote research and innovations. And according to the NEP's vision, the higher education sector, there would be 3 categories of institution. Research intensive university, which can have undergraduate and postgraduate program. Then there will be teaching intensive university, which will mainly have undergraduate, but PG also can be there, with significant amount of research happening. Then autonomous degree granting colleges, which are mainly focusing on undergraduate education, but PG also can be there. So this is these are the 3 categories. There is no affiliating university or there is no affiliated college as per the NEP's vision. And all institutions, all universities should be multidisciplinary. Emphasis shall be on granting autonomy to institutions. That today also our education minister, while releasing the NIRF ranking, was mentioning that the focus of the government would be to grant more autonomy to the institutions. And now the NEP talk about graded autonomy. And then important point for teachers like us, you and me, is that we should be committed to teaching, research, and community engagement. So we have an added dimension, teaching, research people were talking about, but there is another one called the community engagement. That is also coming. We should find some time, or 10 to 20% of our time should be spent for community engagement. Now, talking about graded autonomy, already UGC has a system of graded autonomy. There are 3 categories: category 1 university, category 2 university, now graded autonomy. And recently AICT has announced graded autonomy for standalone institutions. That is coming up in India. So University of Hyderabad is an example of category 1 grade autonomous university. It's already awarded by the UGC. And you can see the requirements, like there should be a score of 3.51, and it should be ranked in the top 500 in the QS ranking, international ranking. And then in the category 2, the NAC score can be 3.26 up to 3.5, and things like that. This is the graded autonomy, and it may take a new shape when the NEP is implemented. Now, coming to our focus, that is the engineering education, we have to think about a globally relevant education. So whatever we teach should become globally relevant and equitable to all in the country. And then we have to digitally enable the education. So this is something where we need to have new teaching styles, new pedagogy, and new content development initiatives to make the engineering education fully digitally enabled. Now we are forced to use the digital means because of the COVID, and COVID had taught us many new lessons in the content delivery and teaching. So we have to learn from that one, and perhaps we have to know our limitations existing at present, and then try to bridge that limitation through digital technology. And then we have to make the high learning immersive and experiential, supported with intensive research delivered by highly knowledgeable and smart faculty. So smartness need to be inculcated in the faculty. So these FDPs actually should be leading you to becoming a smart faculty who would be fit enough to work in the new policy framework. And also that we have to convert the content made available on and make it possible for or available for open distance learning as well. So we have seen many issues like enrollment, the GER expansion, technological penetration, and capacity expansion, quality, experiential learning. All these are providing us challenges as well as opportunities, and we have new sets of requirements. And these are all coming, as we have seen, in the 10 to 20 years time, we have to achieve the target of NP 2020. So we have to think how we shall make the engineering education immersive, creative, and instilling a spirit of innovation. This is what we have to think. The FDP perhaps would give you the thoughts. The IoT is a new technology. You have been listening to the lectures and you have seen how this can be implemented. So you can, such things when you try to do, you become totally immersed in that knowledge domain. And another point is that we have to create a kind of entrepreneurship attitude in the minds of the student. They have to be innovative, and that innovation will get converted into a product, and the student will become an entrepreneur. So again, for that, we also need that immersive learning happening through the activities. And maybe that if we introduce the second year student to this kind of slow immersive learning, perhaps we can kindle the interest in the student. And we should make the student to collaborate. We have to arrange the mentors for the student from within or outside the institution, expose them to the startups and entrepreneurship possibility, the funding schemes, and the technological support, the industries from where they can get the product done. All these are exposures needed for the student. Now, the teacher should know first. If a student had to be innovative, the teacher should know what the student should do. So even if the teacher is not becoming an entrepreneur, they should be feeling that this is, I am again quoting it, the teacher should have a feeling that they are engineers and they are also into the process of innovation and development. And then naturally that spirit will percolate down to the student. And now this will start existing without any change in policy. If we just a change in focus that we want to provide an experiential learning for the student, means we can do these things immediately, and many institutions have already into that. There are examples like BMS College in Mysore, or some of the colleges, Bharatiya Vidyapeetham in Bombay. All these are into this kind of change in the campus setting to make the student to have an immersive learning. So what we should know is that this is an abstraction of what we have been talking. An engineer should know what to think. He should know how to think, and he should know when to think. And then the engineer should also know what to do after he or she get the answer through the thinking process. And our teaching should be leading to this learning. This is what I can summarize and tell you, that the student should know what to think, how to think, and when to think, and also should know the solution. And unless teacher know, the student will not be knowing. We need new teaching styles and deeper understanding of the learner in the light of the expectations of the NEP 20. This is the challenge. And how to train the teachers for the new deliverables, how to ensure that the knowledge is conveyed adequately and the skills are imparted properly. And not only that, if we are talking about a formal education, there should be an assessment. There should be an assessment and evaluation at the end or continuously to grade the student. So the grading part is not removed. It is not an open-ended coaching. It is a close-ended one where at the end of training, there will be an evaluation and a certification. So what are the assessment mechanisms that we can use in the light of the NEP 2020's deeper learning, the experiential learning, and the multidisciplinary learning? Now, quickly, we will look into some of the teaching aspects. Perhaps you might have heard about this in somewhere or others. The teaching and learning should affect the three domains of learning: cognitive learning, affective learning, and the psychomotor learning. For engineering, this is, you can say that this is the perspective of education. Though it is true for all disciplines like science, engineering, or medicine, but we focus only on engineering teaching, that there should be a cognitive learning, affective learning, and a psychomotor learning. Psychomotor learning is physical skills that happen to working with the hands and the coordination of eyes. So the affective learning happening because of the, you can say, the need for teamwork, collaborations, and cognitive learning is confined to one's cognitive abilities. So now, this is an observation by a particular school. A holistic lesson developed by a teacher requires the inclusion of all the three domains in constructing learning tasks for the student. So when we create a teaching lesson and when we create an exercise, we should also have the knowledge on the three domains, and we should also develop the teaching module in such a way that it influences the respective learning. The diversity in such learning tasks help create a comparatively well-rounded learning experience that meets a number of learning styles and learning modalities. So these are general observations, but as a teacher, we have to examine, analyze these things in detail and connect it with our day-to-day work of developing the teaching lessons, added with exercises and case studies to make the learning deeper and experiential. And another point is that to keep the student motivated, what we should do, an increased level of diversity in the delivery of lessons help engage students as well as create more neural network and pathways that helps with recollection of information and events. So this is something which we know all. If you show a painting, the person may remember it more. If you tell, he will not remember that much. So this kind of things are one talking about. So depending on the content what we have to deliver, and depending on the depth of learning what we expect, we need to have a diversity of the delivery of lessons. Sometimes we may have to use case studies, sometimes we may have to use exercises, sometimes we may have to take them to the laboratories to do the practicals. Sometimes you have to give them a project along with the project facilitation center, or you can say tinkering lab or maker space. So this kind of things will make the student involved and learning better. But the question is, with an increased capacity of double the what we have now, even now we have limitations in the infrastructure for the academic institutions. We find it very difficult to provide high quality facilities for the students across the institutions across the country. If that is even the government funded institutions, we can see that there is a limitation in the infrastructure and facilities available. So if that's the case, for a double, how shall we expand the infrastructure and facilities in such a way that all students are able to get the facilities equally well? Now, to some extent is possible using the technology. So if we look at critical thinking, which is essential for the people to solve the real life problems, critical thinking is the purposeful judgment. This process gives a reasoned consideration to events, context, conceptualizations, methods, and criteria. So this is an expert's opinion, though we may not be easily understood by that. There is nothing, if we have a task, if we want to solve it, how we find a solution and what way we start developing the solution. And every need critical thing, whether it's a housewife or whether an engineer, whether it is a top chairman of a company, all would need some point in time something critical thinking to find a solution to a problem which is facing or coming up altogether new. And in the case of engineering, this is one example I have used somewhere else also. Just this is the significance of case studies. I can say you would find a bridge on the left side, which is the Niagara Bridge, and you have water flowing through that. And the Niagara River will be either frozen or it will be flowing with full strength of, you can say, full flow. And on the right side, you can see a similar structure of a bridge, which is near to Calicut in Kerala, and there is no water below. Then you may ask, why should there be such a structure? The point here is that during the monsoon time, the flow through the river is heavy, very, very heavy. In you cannot imagine, you cannot even stand near the, so such will be the rush of water and the turbulence. So there no pier of the bridge can stand in that flow. It will be taken away by the flow. So that is the rate of flow at that point in time. So naturally, the engineers who wanted to construct a bridge in Calicut might have studied various cases, and they might have seen this kind of a picture. Maybe Niagara is one bridge, there may be other bridges as well, where there is no pillar standing in the flow line or flow path of the water. So they have emulated that design and they converted it into their design and constructed a bridge under the Kerala Public Works Department. So you can see. So what we are thinking that there is a problem here existing. There is no water in the summer, but there is heavy water in the monsoon. So you have to consider both monsoon and summer to construct the bridge. So this is the critical thinking part, similar ones. And in the internet, if you search about the Niagara Bridge, you would have a very long historical note about the first bridge, iron bridge constructed, and the subsequent concrete bridge, girder bridge constructed. It's interesting to read for the people, not only civil engineers, but others also. It's very interesting to read. Now, practical point of view, there is one school of thought by the mentoring minds that the critical thinking has 9 aspects, and you can see you start from somewhere. It is like a circle, so you can start anywhere, somewhere. Examine, communicate, inquire, strive, reflect, link, create, adapt, collaborate. So this goes a cycle because the problem design, engineering designs may need an iteration. So the person is in that loop of critical thinking. So these are the 9 aspects that are connected with critical thinking from the psychological viewpoint. And you can read the slides with you, so you can read it. Then the second point is that the problem solving skills, this is actually the mental ability. And there are testing tools and psychological tools or psychometric tools available to find one person's ability to solve the problem in a particular scenario. This problem solving is not like numerical problem solving. It is the social problem solving. Your presence of mind, your involvement, and your ability to take lead. This will be analyzed, and it can be done in a scientific manner also. So for example, if a project had failed, what is the reason for failure of the project? That can be analyzed by using some of the tools, by interviewing the people and finding the answer for that one. That kind of examination tools can be made available to, and also then those people can be trained to have the problem solving abilities. Now, all this we have seen, and what generally is felt is that the education is the enabler for the social change, person's you can say the future career. Everything is enabled by the education. So the curriculum should having that provisions to enable the education in the right way. Employment rate in engineering education has dropped significantly in the past few years because we have seen that there is no much drastic expansion in the industrial sector. So there is nothing like a linearly increasing intake by the industries. But at the same time, there are you can say the requirements for very specialized skills or experienced hands. Now, after the COVID, many industries are recruiting people with experience, and they are hunting for people who can be quickly deployed on their project. Now, another point is that incubation of ideas to startups is not happening in the campuses. And then the innovations fail to take the wings. Innovations are not getting converted into a product and leading to an industry like a startup. Sometimes it is happening, not always it is happening. But at the same point in time, government is taking a lot of initiatives to promote innovations and startups. And there are many tools and software platforms like I am not naming any of the software platforms, but many software platforms are available. Some are free, some are paying, you can say licensed versions. And in engineering life, the solutions, developing the solution, simulation for analysis, design analysis, modeling, these things are still valid and still continuing. What is changing is only the technology by which we do. And the technology is now based on the software platform. So why not we absorb these new approaches and new techniques and new technologies and make this software platforms something like a part of the curriculum, so that the student will be made to learn not only the theory part, but also the application part. So this is something which I place before you. When you look for curriculum revisions, not only look at the many number of theorems and the proof, but also the currently available tools by which we do the engineering task, and try to connect the student with these new tools which are now available across the world. Then we need to create a self-employment, or you can say small scale industries had to come up in large numbers, so that we will have more employment opportunities. So the campus should have that kind of built up to create the you can say to inculcate the attitude of startup and entrepreneurship. And for that, I told you that the teacher should feel that they are also creators and engineers. So there should be a corporate culture. Corporate culture means, according to my personal opinion, corporate culture means everybody is responsible for every action. So when I teach a course, I am not teaching the course on my own. I am teaching the course because my student need to learn something as an engineer. So that collective responsibility just and all the students is like an industry. We are trying to make a product, a finely made product out of our work, and that is what is happening in the industries. So we also need to have a teamwork, by which I call as a corporate culture. So coming towards the end, I would say that imparting education is the real challenge of engineering education for the next 1 decade or 2 decades, is that we need to have an education. Those who are in the beginning of the career, obviously they would have another 20 years or 30 years in the career. So imparting an education that adequately addresses and ensures higher order total learning. So I use the word total learning in the respective engineering disciplines. So this includes the multidisciplinary learning that the particular engineer should have without losing the core competency in the respective discipline. Then we should work, or we should also be part of nonlinear capacity expansion of the GER from the 26% to 50% in 10 to 20 years. Facilitating multidisciplinary knowledge, right attitude, and adequate psychomotor learning skills. Facilitating multiple entry and multiple exit in the degree programs. So if this is something which we will have to wait and see how this will be enabled. There are proposals to have academic credit banks where a person can keep on adding the credit, and finally the credit becomes sufficient, he or she would get a particular degree. So, and this credit can be earned from anywhere in the country, from any institution in the country, or by open distance learning. But when the credit becomes sufficient, the person would get the degree. But the point here is that if an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer or a design engineer is available, he should have sufficient some knowledge and skill what are suitable for the job role. So how we will be able to ensure that a person passing through this multiple entry and multiple exit path is still having the accumulated knowledge and the skill, making him competent for a job role. I hope all of you a person taking 6 years or 7 years doing some jobs or developing his startup still continue to learn should have an accumulated knowledge and which are adequate for his job role, and then providing adequate skills and knowledge with high level of enrichment with values and ethics, enable open distance learning, that too in engineering, by ensuring deeper experiential learning through in the distance mode, how it is possible. Lot of things are there. These are all open challenges for the engineering faculty. And then most important is that when even now we find it difficult to provide employment for the graduate, but if the capacity is doubled, where we shall find employment opportunities for the additional graduate. And how to convince the industry that the curriculum is up to date and empowering and adequately providing the training to make the graduate employable by the conventional and modern industries. The provisions of multiple entry and multiple exit shall only increase employability. So we have to tell the industries that even if the academic system has multiple entry and multiple exit, the final product is employable. So that to summarize, we have little hope that employment rate in engineering education sector will increase through various development schemes. We can be hopeful of that. Startups can happen as something common. So all the institutions would promote startups and incubation. And research will get strengthened with deeper involvement of faculty and the students. So innovation should be helped to take the wings to convert idea into the product. More initiatives should happen to promote innovations and startup in the campuses. And teachers should become the grand enablers for the future generations. The NEP envisages higher education institutions to be multidisciplinary. And we have seen there are degree granting institutions or research intensive universities. So all these ones we need to have or we can think about multidisciplinary programs as part of our postgraduate degree programs, and we can make the undergraduate programs more flexible in terms of the curriculum, so that the student will learn multiple disciplines without losing the focus on the core. And then more important is that we should not ignore anyone in the society. So socially and economically disadvantaged groups should also be given adequate care to bring them up. And as Kothari Commission had done, we have to globalize the curriculum. Our product should be globally employable. And there are two terms, one just for sharing my thoughts with you. There are two terms. One is universalization of education and the globalization of education. Universalization of education means the gross enrollment ratio becomes ideally 100%. So the more and more GER, we are reaching out to more and more in our among our citizens. So we are universalizing education for reaching out to all in our country. But globalization means after education, after getting the degree, the graduate can move across the world as what we have seen. The 10+2+3 system recommended by the Kothari Commission was actually to make the graduate equivalent to the graduate in the foreign country. So similarly, in terms of the knowledge and the skill set, also the graduate should be employable across the world. So that means the globalization. So universalization means spreading across education across the country, and globalization means internationally the graduate or the learner becomes acceptable. And perhaps globalization would attract the learners from other country, because we have a globally relevant education program. So the learners from other country could also come to India and work more and more. And then if we look at the 17 sustainable development goals, none of the goal can be achieved without engineers, because everywhere there is a development, there is the investigation, experimentation, product development, everything associated with that, and research and innovation, everywhere it can be there, either through logistics or through technology or through some development or other. So if the countries are focusing on sustainable development goals, engineers would get a lot of opportunities in some form or other. So the IoT, what you are learning, IoT in agriculture is one of such things happen. So if you want to remove the poverty, we need to have agriculture. Even the places where it's not, we have to use a technology to produce the food items. So we may need an automation. Of course, we may need engineer. So this table shows that the population in India is, this is a somewhat old data, maybe 3 or 4 year old data. So the population in India is 138 crore, and the population in US is only much less than that, and the population in China is 143 crore. Now the median age of Chinese people is 38. For India, it is 28, and for US, it is 38. And you can see that there are countries which are developed countries like Russia, Japan, or US or Canada. The median age is much higher than what Indian is having. So this is what we call as the demographic dividend of India. Then the developed countries and developing countries would need more engineers, because the available people for education is less or decreasing year after year. But we have fortunately the other for proportion. So we have a scope for globalizing our academic system, so that our people can go and live and work in other countries. So we have to think globally and produce global engineers. So this is the, you can say, ultimately the proposition, but I would like to place before you as faculty. And in the focus or in the context of NPE 2020, we need to think about imparting the right amount, right kind of skills, right kind of knowledge to make global engineers. So I wish you all the very best. So I acknowledge the sources of information, including the internet. I thank the LBS College of Engineering and especially the coordinator, Dr. Mary Reena, for the kind invitation to talk about NEP 2020. So these are the links which I have used apart from the other common Google sources. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now room is open for the discussion. So it was quite informative and interesting. I wonder that you have the same touch of your contribution in this talk also. So this is not, I think all the participants enjoyed the session well, even though this was an topic of this NEP, a little bit boring maybe, but you have changed that one. You made it interesting one, sir, this session also. Uh, I
Thank
think
you. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the compliment.
one query is there, how the modification in education may help in increasing employment?
Increasing employment or employability? Two
Uh,
things are there. Employment is that we need to create more opportunities or vacancies for employment. So naturally that would need an expansion in the industrial sector or in the government sector. Maybe that the government is bringing certain schemes for community development. Through that, there may be an expansion in the vacancies in the government sector, or industry should expand. In the industries, what we can say is that small scale sector will have to expand, and that is the scope we have now. So the big industries are more or less out of question because of the environmental issues, the green tribunal issues, and things like that. No one is thinking about having a big industry. Though whatever industry is already existing, they may, but they may in that the new requirement of the society will have to be met. For example, if you look at electric car, the electric car or electric scooter, no one is thinking about a big industry. They are thinking only about a small, medium scale industry, or even an assemblage of small scale industries in a cluster form to produce the electric car. This is the new way of thinking about industries. If we are expanding that small scale sector and of industries, there would be an increase in the employment possible in our country. Hope I have done my clarification or given my thought in that point.
Ashok Chowdhury. I think yes, you have made a clear clarification, sir. I think it's cleared. Any other queries? Participants, in your institute, any practices already started or any initiative started towards this NEP 2020? You can share your experience.
Yeah, that will be a good idea. If anyone started thinking about how we are to go about with NEP 2020, please share.
I think participants from Thakur College of Engineering, they are present. They can share your views because there's a partnership between our college and this Thakur College of Engineering. So they have conducted a couple of programs on this. Ms. Vaishali and Mr. Jalpaban. If you are present, please, if you can share your view. I think okay. Any participant is free to talk. You can share your views. You can you tell your opinions. Because, yes, somebody. Yes, please. It's about 4:10 nearing, so everyone is busy with that. Okay. Okay, if no queries are there, we can wind up the session. Anyway, sir has shared the PPT with us, so it will be useful for you for the future reference also. So I thank Dr. Abraham T. Matthew, sir. So when I invited him, he was badly affected with corona, and even though he suspected that he can deliver it or not, but then he agreed. Anyway, I will do. So I thank personally and on behalf of this organizing our institute and coordinators and our department side, and on behalf of all the participants, uh, I thank you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of the heart. You did it to work on this session. I know that how much time you have spent for the perfection of this presentation. So thank you again. I thank all his family members also.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. Thank you so
okay,
much.
so okay, sir. Thank you,
So
sir.
today is the 4th day, and tomorrow you would be
Yes,
completing the
last
5
day.
days. Yeah.
Yes,
And this one.
5th day.
Oh, good, good, good.
Okay, sir. So this time we had a lot of industrial sessions. This 49 out of 14 we chose agriculture related. We tried to
Oh,
incorporate more
oh,
industry people from
okay.
industry. So it's okay, sir. So we have to start something to do. That is the thing
Yeah, yeah, sure,
from
sure,
this
sure.
FDP session.
Right, right, right.
Yes.
And if some of the participants are taking something to their lab and then doing it once the corona subsides, it will be great. Let the participants make a group and start sharing like a WhatsApp group or something, and then keep the network active even after the FDP. That is my wish. Okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
okay,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you. I will sign off now. You
Okay,
can
thank you very
carry on.
much, sir.
Thank you. Right.
The next last day is that 5th day. Tomorrow is our last day, and we would like to have a photo session at 2:30 p.m. that I will post in our WhatsApp group also. So be ready to switch on your videos at 2:30. That is the valedictory function start at 2:30, and mostly 1 hour or less than